Welcome back, Guardians. In this report, we discuss the rumors and theories surrounding the villainous and contemptuous Scorn, a group of fallen prisoners found within the Reef, with previous ties to the Reef-born Awoken. We will discuss what we know of fallen history, who they may be, and their potential motivations to act against us and the will of the Traveler. Politics in our world are often black and white, and while the factions and the consensus bicker over the course of the last city, and by correlation humanity, the politics of our enemies, the Vex, Fallen, Hive, Taken, and Cabal, often do not affect us beyond standard warfare. The Cabal and some Fallen politics set aside, of course. The others see contempt in fighting us tooth and nail until our extinction. And why wouldn't they? We've spent the last 200 or odd so years butchering their people across the solar system, from Earth to Venus. We've done so much damage that the fallen houses have ceased to exist, burned and buried their regalias, and have become nothing more than common pirates, struggling to stay afloat in a sea of brutality we, Guardians, have created. The story of the Scorn is perhaps of our own doing, for they are a people backed into a corner. Some, perhaps feeling betrayed, others harboring ill will for the Traveler spawn for untold generations. With this in mind, we will begin to discover and theorize who these Scorn truly are, and why they've chosen to ally themselves with the Queen's supposed dead brother, heir to the Reef. Before the Age of Victory, before the Siva Crisis and the Red War, there was a time in which the fallen houses were to be united, under the self-proclaimed Kell of Kells, or Skolas, as he was referred to. Skolas fought against the Reef during our Battle of Six Fronts. Had the Reef not rallied against Skolas and his house or bannerman, the House of Wolves, many military historians in the city agree, we would not be here. For the Fallen had amassed a force larger than any before it, and had besieged the last city. If Skolas and the Fallen on Earth had unified, it's highly likely our defeat would have been all but certain. But the Reef did not act in our favor. They simply acted upon an opportunity, realizing that the Fallen were a threat to not only Earth, but to the Reef-born as well. They seized their chance to eliminate a massive future threat in their own home territory. Arguably, Morozov could have believed in the plight of the Traveler and that of humanity. The Reef-born were, after all, originally human. But all of her actions, including her sacrifice against Oryx, seemed to serve ulterior, shadowy motives. This is perhaps one of the first moments of friction between the Reef and humanity back on Earth. Many in the Reef fell in a war that they felt was not their own, and rather than blame their leadership, they chose to harbor a certain hatred for Guardians. At least, that was how it was perceived. This changed when the Reef-born learned Guardians were motivated by more than just glory. We are motivated by plunder, relics, and artifacts, as many of us seek greater weaponry, armor, or resources to call our own. And what better way to motivate a Guardian with the promise of loot? With Skolas now defeated, and the Battle of Six Fronts coming to a close, both Earth and the Reef would return to restructuring and peace. Morozov would create the Prison of Elders, a new home for the Fallen she had captured during the war, and a place for future gladiatorial combat for all races in the Sol system. Skolas was to be gifted to the Nine. Sov had hoped to placate them in the chances that they would forgive the Reef's transgressions, or perhaps to repay an old debt. Regardless, this initial transfer of Skolas would bring Guardians from the Earth to the Reef in a mutual alliance of need and avarice. The Nine, in what could be considered some odd interstellar game, released Skolas to the wild, inciting Guardians to act against his efforts to reunite the fallen houses and rally against a new war focused on the Traveler and its people. Perhaps the Nine had foreseen a future of allegiance between humanity and the Reef, or perhaps we are all just pawns in their game of death and shadow. However, Not all of the fallen that had been defeated in the recent Reef War had been imprisoned. Those that did not scatter would swear allegiance to a new Kel, Mara Zav. And at the head of the House Judgment was Varix, a veteran of the initial campaigns in the Reef War. This is the interesting caveat, Guardians, and can speak as to why the Scorn seek to follow Uldren Zav, now operating against us, the butcher of our friends. By the end of the Taken War, Marzav had vanished or was presumed dead. Uldren Zav was missing or in hiding, but the Reef remained, as did its mighty prison of elders. It needed a caretaker, a warden, with the cunning and ability to capture his foes and lock them away, just in case he had a use for them. It needed a hunter of certain charisma. Thankfully, the Vanguard had just the person for the job. Cayde-6, the veteran of the Red War, inheritor of the position of Hunter Vanguard and oath brother of Andal Brask, friend to all, and would become the new warden of the Prison of Elders. But this is where we begin to delve into assumption and discourse, as the full facts have not been truly revealed. Firstly, it's assumed that all of the quote-unquote tenets of the Prison of Elders were not treated well. Being prisoners of war and hating their captor are two powerful motivators to fuel hatred and vengeance. While Cayde is often seen as aloof and characteristically uncaring, it's highly likely he too has ulterior motives for the prison. Perhaps testing the combat prowess of our enemies, studying and analyzing their tactics in mock combat scenarios, seeing how they react to certain experimental stimuli. The list of potentials is endless. Unfortunately, we simply do not know. At least at this time. The Cryptarchs here in the city foresee that with time, all things will become transparent. The Scorn are undoubtedly prisoners to this prison of Cayde, or at least were before they were released. But why was their escape assisted? Immediately, Uldren Zav is the most likely of subjects, and while we cannot say that this is true with absolute certainty, Uldren does have a motive. The death of his sister at the hands of the enemy we Guardians practically taunted here. Imagine for a moment, had we not committed the act of murder upon Crota, Oryx may have never turned his gaze upon this system. Mara may have never needed to sacrifice her entire people, Uldren's people, in one feeble use of the Harbingers. Sadly, the world in which we live is dark. It's unforgiving. It's sympathetic only to the powerful, those that take, those that kill. Hoping and wishing or jumping into tangents about what if or what could doesn't change the present and never will. Uldren, perhaps racked with grief or anger, or a convenient cocktail of both, frees the Scorn, setting its barons upon our world. Effectively, Uldren's intentions and attitudes towards Guardians or that of the Traveler was always questionable. His interaction with us always tasted bitter, as if his air of superiority carried lingering effects upon our psyche. Let's assume all of this is potentially true. The Scorn are now indebted to Uldren after being freed from the shackles of Cayde, and with the Warden disposed of, they have their sights set on the reawoken Traveler with a peculiar taste for vile righteousness. But we've always known the Reef Awoken weren't to be trusted, at least not completely. Their people have always seen us as lesser beings, savages, worshipping a once dead and still apathetic god. They've never cared for our ambition of another golden age, to remove the plague of Xenos and machines that transforms our planet, our people, into their vision. They saw us as tools, to be used and then cast aside when our reliability was worn. Make Uldren and his Scorn remember what it means when a Guardian, not just a hunter, takes up the oath of a fallen comrade, a leader, and a friend. Make those barons regret siding with a fool whose only intention is to see us forgotten, our city burned, and our traveler consumed. Make them remember Cayde-6.